The day I was born, a great whale fell from the sky. We all saw it. I peeked it from my mother's navel and knew I must hurry to be. It was larger than the temple, and there in the dunes it had crushed a flock of my father's sheep, our only sheep. It lay there, heaving, gouged sides spilling silk streamers like bloody anemones. Its eye was carved out of one single piece of jade, larger than our door, and its painted pupils trembled and widened and trembled and widened and went into fits before it stilled. My mother told me not to tell the story anymore, but I saw it. It fell from a height higher than the clouds, and I saw, too, the person-shaped thing that fell and tumble-glided its way away. The beast died, and our sheep, but the man did not come to collect his steed or take responsibility. If you do not love a thing, you must have at least enough honor to bury it. No soldiers came, they never do, unless they come to kill us. So the town buried it. It was hard work. The sand was very soft. Weeks later, raiders came and were caught trying to make off with the eye. They escaped with their lives, but they have bullets in their flesh now to serve reminder. The chief put the eye back and covered it up. As it rot, it smells like crushed, rotten cherries. The middle of a desert is an odd place for a whale to come to die, and the sky an odd place for a whale to be killed. But the only way to topple is down, I suppose. My name is Khadija. I'm from Kenya and I'm a writer. The best thing about being a writer in Kenya is that you're always surrounded by a kind of energetic chaos, and that gives the work a lot of great energy. Everyone is very involved in society. They're not just writing as their whole lives. Writing is a way to express themselves, and Kenyans are very resilient when it comes to pursuing their art and making sure their art gets out there, regardless of whether they have funding or resources. And I think Kenyan writers, I was talking to another writer the other day, and I was trying to tell them what I enjoyed so much about Kenyan writing, apart from, obviously my being Kenyan. But I felt like Kenyan writing has a certain kind of charisma that is hard to place, but is very instantly recognizable to me. All right, the worst part is what the best part kind of stems out of. The worst part about Kenya is infrastructural, in terms of we don't really have a lot of funding put into the creative arts. We don't have MFAs, we don't have residencies, fellowships, any kind of government subsidies or general interest. And so unfortunately, that means that a very specific class of people do end up going into writing, people who can afford it, people who have time, which isn't everyone, people who've had an education. So that means kind of you don't really hear from a certain section of society, which means you don't get an accurate portrait of the whole society, unfortunately. And if it's not isolated to a certain class of people, then it's people who have a very deep hunger for putting their work out and who are putting their work out at a great cost. But see, you can't really talk about the bad without talking about the good, because the good arises out of the bad. It means that writers have had to be really resourceful. Writers have gone on to create their own literary magazines, their own initiatives, and kind of lift up other writers. So that's why I call Kenyan writers resilient. The weather. The weather in Kenya is predictable. Um, it's hot or it's not hot. Here it's I like Iowa a lot, but your weather changes it's very schizophrenic day to day. I miss what's great about Kenya. Obviously, is not the weather; it's the people, and I think the people are very generous in their spirit, despite maybe they're not having a good day or whatever it is. But I think there's a general sense of goodwill towards other people, and a sense of humor that's really infectious. You're in the trenches, but you have to laugh. And all Kenyans are pretty much born storytellers, very good at telling stories. And I miss just being in those kinds of spaces where, people have their own flavorful ways of telling stories. Yeah. I like to think that I am a very visual writer, or at least that's where the process begins. There's always an image, or, or I kind of concentrate on a figure and then kind of build other images around that. So the more absurd, the more fantastic the image, the more interesting. And that doesn't mean that I'm deliberately trying to make the image fantastic or absurd. Sometimes the image just comes to me very, very fully, and then I kind of just have to build a story and continue from that point on. I like characters with strange mannerisms who speak in I don't know if it's a very Kenyan way, but it's a way familiar to me in the coast. A mixture of subtle conversations and like blunt statements, which gives way to colorful characters. I like to build in a lot of strange imagery. Oh, it's not strange to me, but imagery like that is very normal to me in terms of like describing, the clouds going over the sun like a sheet of cloth being put over rising dough. That feels very familiar to me. That feels very Coastarian and Swahili to me. So the issues I have, or the difficulties that come when I'm writing, is kind of sometimes keeping momentum. Yeah, because sometimes I can stick with something and be thinking in too much there when I should be moving on. So yeah. When I was younger, I had the idea that the writer should always tell the truth, and the writer's first duty is to the people and to society. And then as I grew older, I realized that having an imagination or having spaces for entertainment can be radical. Some writers will be good at writing about social commentary, and I think that has its place and that has its importance, and I value that a lot. But I've talked about this before. My dream is to write completely unnecessary fiction. Fiction that is about entertainment, that is about transporting people, that's about fun. And if I'm gonna continue doing that forever, or I'll change my mind later and write something more serious, we'll see. But yeah, I really like just, a space for levity, a space for adventure. This is difficult because I talked about there not being funding and there not being opportunities. But at the same time, I don't know if the government can be involved without interfering. I don't want to be in a situation where writers feel like they have to be a jukebox playing the right tune all the time. So I don't know if we're there as a society right now, as a Kenyan society at least. I'm sure this conversation has been had in other places, obviously. But right now, as a Kenyan, speaking honestly, I don't know if the government is capable of funding such things, because I think, you know, there's a great period of censorship and a great period of dictatorship that Kenya is still kind of growing out of, and that a form of that censorship still exists today. But yeah, but I think right now as a Kenyan society, the government is not really interested in encouraging the imagination of the population. It is against their interest to encourage the imagination of the population. And you can see it also in the assigned readings. I never liked assigned readings when I was in school. They were assigned. So assigned reading can be normally very out of date. Books are very taxed, and unfortunately that means books are very expensive. So reading is a luxury. I was going to say something else. I forgot what it was. I read a lot of poetry growing up. I read a lot of John Keats. I read a lot of the names escape me. I read a lot of the old English poets when I was in high school. And as I grew older now, I read a lot of short stories, especially like African short stories. A lot of Kenyan writers. I don't have the stamina or to read a whole novel, I'm realizing. So I read a lot of short stories by people like Makena Onjerika, Linda Musita, Troy Onyango, who else? Itzel Luhumio was a fantastic writer. Yeah, and right now I read more current poetry by a lot of either Muslim writers, female writers, or like Treya Al-Montasser, or like women from North Africa, women from Sudan, and such. Yeah, I read a lot of their poetry. Okay, on my desk is a book of poetry called Salat by Dujie Tahat. I think that's how you. I'm not sure if that's how you say the name or not. The Wild Fox of Yemen by Treya Al-Montasser. A book on the mythologies and mysticism. I need to remember. I actually forgot the title, but it's more of a theory book about mythology and mysticism. And The Madhouse, T.J. Benson, The Feshif for Peter Nazareth. A lot of his books on African criticism, I have them too. I've been working on some poetry unexpectedly. I came here to work on some prose and ended up working on a lot of poetry. And I've been working on some of my shorter horror stories, novellas. I'm trying to write a very cliched gothic novel because it seemed like a fun experiment. And yeah, another island story based on but more fantasy than magical realism this time. Yeah. As for what I found different or interesting about Iowa, the weather, I told you already, it's very cold. Very, very cold, obscenely cold. But I'm enjoying it. I found it refreshing in the beginning. Sometimes I would just, I can't deal with this today. Yeah, I'm going to stay home. But the people are quite friendly and warm. It's nice to see so many students around. This is a university city, basically, right? Your libraries are wonderful. I I really enjoy libraries. The benefit, I really enjoyed being in Iowa because not only because Iowa is a really nice city, but because this is the first time I've actually been so steeped in a writing circle, or not necessarily like we're writing together or anything, but just to be around so many writers who are all strange and weird in their own ways, and yet very understanding and very open. And it's been nice to have that atmosphere. I don't think I've ever experienced that before. And I think I'll feel very sad when I have to go back home.